Ever felt the heat of a disagreement spiral into hostility? That's what happens when someone hears "I disagree" and immediately shuts down. But what if you could transform discord into dialogue without raising your voice or losing your cool? Let's explore how Jefferson Fisher teaches us the art of disagreement without conflict. We've all been there. You're in the middle of a conversation, and suddenly it takes a turn. Tension rises, voices tighten. Maybe your hands start to sweat, or your stomach clenches. And just like that, a simple disagreement turns into a full-blown argument. Why does this happen so easily? Part of the problem is that most of us were never taught how to disagree constructively. We think winning means proving someone wrong, that defending our point means attacking theirs. But when we treat disagreement like a battle, we both lose. Because even if you win the argument, what happens to the relationship? That's where Jefferson Fisher steps in. A trial lawyer by profession, Fisher spends his days navigating heated conflicts, yet he's also mastered the art of keeping things calm, respectful, and human. And the best part? His tools aren't just for courtrooms. They work in relationships, friendships, even on social media. So what are these tools? And how can you use them to speak your mind without starting a war? Let's start by flipping the whole idea of disagreeing on its head. Let's be honest, most people don't enjoy being told they're wrong. When someone challenges our opinion, it can feel personal, even threatening. And that's because, deep down, disagreement often triggers something ancient in us, a survival instinct. Think about it. You share your point of view, and suddenly someone pushes back. What's your first reaction? You get tense. You interrupt. You start preparing your next argument instead of really listening. That's not conversation. That's emotional armor. According to Jefferson Fisher, this defensiveness comes from a lack of emotional safety. When people don't feel heard, they stop listening. And when they don't feel respected, they dig in, even if they're wrong. So how do you break the cycle? It starts with recognizing that disagreement isn't the problem. How we respond is. If you can stay calm, grounded, and genuinely curious, you create a space where the other person doesn't need to defend themselves. And when they're not on edge, they're more likely to listen to you too. Fisher calls this de-escalating the moment. It's not about giving in, it's about creating connection before correction. And it all starts with the next move you make. Have you ever noticed how quickly someone shuts down when they hear the word "you"? You always do this. You don't get it, you never listen. It doesn't matter how calm your voice is. Those statements land like punches. Why? Because "you" language puts people on the defensive. It sounds like blame, like finger pointing, and no one wants to feel attacked, even if you're right. Jefferson Fisher flips the script by encouraging collaborative language. Instead of saying, "You're not understanding me," try, "Let's figure out where we're missing each other." It's subtle, but powerful. That one word, "let's," instantly shifts the energy from me versus you to us versus the problem. It creates partnership. It tells the other person, "I'm not here to win, I'm here to work with you." This isn't just about being polite, it's a strategy. Collaborative language lowers tension, opens up dialogue, and invites solutions instead of arguments. So, next time you're tempted to start a sentence with "you," pause. Ask yourself, can I say this in a way that brings us together, not further apart? Because when language connects instead of divides, disagreement becomes progress. Disagreements often turn ugly, not because of what's said, but because of how we react. When someone says something we strongly disagree with, the instinct is to correct them, or worse, to win. But what if instead of arguing, you got curious? Jefferson Fisher calls this one of the most powerful tools in communication. Curiosity disarms. It shifts the energy from confrontation to exploration. So instead of firing back with, "That's wrong," try out, "That's interesting. Can you help me understand how you see it that way?" That question does two things. First, it gives the other person a chance to explain without feeling cornered. Second, it buys you time to breathe, to think, and to approach the conversation with a clearer head. It also shows that you're listening, not just waiting to talk. Curiosity invites depth. It says, "I care more about understanding than proving a point." That alone can change the entire tone of a disagreement. So the next time someone says something that rubs you the wrong way, stop, take a breath, and ask a question, not to trap, but to learn. You might be surprised what happens when ego steps back and curiosity takes the lead. In the heat of a disagreement, every second feels like a pressure cooker. Your heart's racing, your brain's moving faster than your mouth, and before you know it, you've said something sharp, sarcastic, or worse, something you can't take back. Jefferson Fisher teaches something counterintuitive, yet incredibly effective. Pause. Just a second or two. That moment of silence, it's not awkward, it's powerful. A pause gives your emotions time to settle. It tells your nervous system, we're not in danger, we're in a conversation. And most importantly, it gives the other person a chance to feel heard instead of steamrolled. Let's say someone challenges your idea. Instead of jumping in defensively, you take a breath and pause. Suddenly, your next words come from a place of clarity, not reaction. You're no longer fueling the fire, you're directing the energy. And it's contagious. When you slow down, the other person often does too. Fisher often reminds us, you don't have to fill every silence. Sometimes the pause is where trust builds. It shows confidence, control, and respect. In a world that rushes to respond, the pause can be your most powerful tool. Here's a myth we need to break. Validating someone's feelings doesn't mean you agree with them. Sounds strange, right? But Jefferson Fisher says this is one of the biggest keys to keeping a disagreement respectful and productive. Think about it. You're in a conversation, things get tense, and the other person says something that makes your blood boil. Your instinct might be to shut it down, to say, that's not true, or that's ridiculous. But here's another way. I can see this really matters to you. It sounds like you've had a tough experience with this. Notice something? You're not agreeing with their opinion. You're acknowledging their emotion. And that, more than anything, opens the door to real dialogue. Validation is about seeing the person behind the point. It's a way of saying, I hear you. You're not invisible to me. When people feel seen, they stop shouting, they stop defending, and they start listening. So no, you don't have to give up your beliefs. You don't have to say they're right. But if you can make them feel heard, you'll turn arguments into conversations. And conversations, not shouting matches, are how things change. Ever notice how people respond when you say, you're wrong? Walls go up, minds shut down. The conversation stops being about understanding and starts being about defending. Jefferson Fisher points out something called the persuasion paradox. The more you push, the less people move. But if you ask the right question, their mind begins to open on its own. Instead of saying, that makes no sense, try asking, can you walk me through how you see it? It's simple, but it changes everything. Why? Because questions spark reflection. They create space. They tell the other person, I'm interested in your perspective. Help me understand. And when people feel heard, they're far more likely to listen in return. This isn't about being manipulative. It's about shifting from combat to curiosity, from convincing to connecting. Statements corner people. Questions invite them out. So the next time you're deep in a disagreement, resist the urge to lecture. Instead, take a breath and ask something real. Not to trap, but to learn. Because smart questions don't just change conversations. They can change minds. You're halfway through a sentence and boom, someone cuts you off. Ever had that happen? Most people either raise their voice or shrink back in frustration. But Jefferson Fisher doesn't do either. He shows what real composure looks like. No shouting, no snapping back, just calm control. When interrupted, Fisher simply lets the person finish, then resumes where he left off, without losing stride. Sometimes he gently calls it out. I can't hear you when I'm interrupted. That's not passive. That's powerful. It's a technique that signals, I'm here to speak, but I'm not here to fight. This kind of response shifts the energy in the room. Suddenly, the interrupter feels the weight of their action without a confrontation. You remain grounded, and the conversation stays on course. Want to try it? Use the pause resume technique next time someone talks over you. Let them speak. Then pick up your thoughts calmly and confidently. It's authority without aggression, respect without submission. And more often than not, you'll find something surprising happens when you don't match their energy. Try the pause resume technique next time and watch the energy shift. Let's be honest, not every conversation stays respectful. Sometimes the other person talks over you, dismisses your words, or even becomes aggressive. So what do? Do you stay silent? Push back? Jefferson Fisher says you don't have to choose either extreme. you can protect your peace and still show up with clarity. Start by setting expectations early. Before diving into a sensitive topic, say something like, "This might be intense, but I'd really like us to talk about X." That small warning helps the other person prepare emotionally and shows you're coming in with honesty, not heat. Now, what if the other person still refuses to engage respectfully? Fisher says it's perfectly okay to step away. You're not walking out, you're pressing pause to preserve your dignity. And if things cross a line, name it, clearly, calmly. "I won't continue this conversation if I'm being shouted at." That isn't a weakness, that's self-respect in action. Boundaries don't shut down connections. They make it possible, because without boundaries, there's no real safety in dialogue. And without safety, no one really listens. If someone is abusive or dismissive, state your boundary. "I won't continue if I'm shouted at." That preserves dignity without escalating. Most arguments don't end with a handshake or a clear winner. In fact, they usually end with tension, silence, or both people walking away feeling misunderstood. Jefferson Fisher reminds us, it's not just the argument that matters, it's what you do after that shapes the relationship. This is what he calls the repair conversation. It's not about fixing everything immediately. It's about circling back, slowing things down, and making space for mutual clarity. Start with a lower voice. Drop the tension. You might say, "Earlier got heated. I'd like to understand what happened between us." That one sentence opens the door for healing. It shows you're not out to win, you're out to connect. That alone can shift the entire energy. Fisher emphasizes that repair doesn't mean apologizing for your truth. It means making space to hear the other person's version too. This is where real connection happens. Not during the fight, but in the quiet, thoughtful return that follows. No ego, no scoring points, just honesty. This is where relationships deepen, not by avoiding conflict, but by addressing it calmly after the storm. Not all conflict is loud. Some of it whispers, silent treatment, sarcasm, or vague resistance. Fisher says these forms of passive aggression are just as damaging as yelling. Ignoring them won't fix it. Instead, call it out gently. Ask, "Something feels off. Are you comfortable talking about this now or later?" It's a simple question, but it opens the door. It signals safety and honesty. Sometimes people don't even know they're being passive-aggressive. A calm invitation helps everyone see it. That alone can dissolve the tension. 12th emotion versus idea. Never mix both. Ever been told, "You don't get it"? That's not disagreement, it's a jab. Fisher says the moment you attack the person, your argument weakens. Stay focused on the idea, not the individual. Try saying, "I've had a different experience," or "That hasn't worked for me in the past." See how it keeps the door open? Disagreement should move the conversation forward, not tear the person down. The key is separating the idea from identity. What if emotions still overwhelm logic? The secret may lie in nonverbal strategy and the power of silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. Fisher teaches that silence isn't empty, it's deliberate. When emotions run high, a pause gives space to think, breathe, and stay centered. And when you don't rush to fill the gap, you control the rhythm. Let provocative words hang in the air. Don't react. Let them settle. It's not about passive resistance, it's about thoughtful power. You'll come across as measured and command attention without saying a word. Before stepping into a tough conversation, Fisher says, set the frame. Say something like, "This might be emotional, and I appreciate you hearing me out." That statement alone softens tension. Then clearly state the topic and outcome you're hoping for. When people know what to expect, their defenses go down. It's not manipulation, it's preparation. You're inviting collaboration, not combat. The frame doesn't solve the conflict, but it keeps it from spiraling. When everyone knows the frame, dialogue becomes easier, even if the content is hard. What if winning an argument means losing trust? Fisher flips the usual goal. Instead of proving your point, focus on keeping the connection alive. Ask yourself, do I want to be right, or do I want us to still be talking tomorrow? That shift in mindset changes the whole dynamic. You're not letting go of your opinion. You're valuing the person more than the power struggle. And ironically, that's what often leads to true influence. Imagine someone pulls rank or speaks from power. and you stand firm without escalating. What's the formula for that? When someone flexes authority or uses their status to dominate, it's tempting to fire back. But Fisher recommends something smarter: composure. Breathe, slow down. Don't let their power shake yours. Say, "I see it differently," or "Let's talk it through." You're not surrendering. You're staying strategic, because power often expects pushback. What it doesn't expect is calm. That's your edge. More times than not, power deflates against composure, not confrontation. Disagreement doesn't have to be a battleground. It can be a bridge. Jefferson Fisher's approach teaches us that the goal isn't to win, it's to understand, to listen first, to speak with clarity, to stay calm when things get tense. These aren't soft skills, they're powerful ones. Because real influence isn't loud. It's steady, respectful, and deeply human. Remember, don't ask how to win the argument. Ask, can we stay connected through disagreement? If you found these insights helpful, hit like and subscribe for more communication techniques inspired by Jefferson Fisher's approach. Comment below, when was the last time you disagreed but stayed in connection?